Felicitations! It is me, Felicia Day, and this is my podcast. Welcome, you guys. This is our 20th podcast together. I hope you've been enjoying our journey of learning how to podcast this year. It is a 2018 thing to do, to podcast, clearly because there's 8 million of them, but I did it because I just wanted to do something creative, and I've really enjoyed it. I hope you guys have stuck with it. If you have, please, subscribe on iTunes and all that stuff. I'm almost ready to take the beta off of it, but I'm not ready to commit to the format yet, which is basically me just talking. One day, guys, I'll just take the Band-Aid off and just say, this is what it is. This is it. It's kind of like my thighs. I just need to just look in the mirror and be like, you know what? That's it. That's what they are. Stop thinking about a different pair of thighs. Those are your thighs. They're fine. I am in such a good mood, you guys. I finished a writing deadline today, and although there's a lot of work to do, I got my goal for the year done, and so I can take 3 weeks to work on something else that I'm way behind on. So they're all good things, though. They're all good things that I'm going to be able to share with you next year that I can't talk about right now, and I'm pretty thrilled. Also, you may notice that I have a little more pep in my step vocally. I am like a new woman. It has been 2 weeks, and I'm a new woman. Do you know why, guys? I don't know why. I mean, I'm going to attribute it to the fact that I went back on my thyroid medication. Remember, I don't know, it was in May or something. I just stopped taking it because I had a physical, and the doctor was like, well, it's a minimal dose. You might as well just stop. And I was like, okay. And literally, I have been fighting depression all summer. I mean, honestly, and I developed insomnia. Now, I don't know if they're related. So I've had a slow thyroid for many years. I think I burned it out when I had a nervous breakdown. You'll read about my book. And so ever since, for about 4 years, I've been on Synthroid, which is basically like just the generic thing, low dose. But I went off of it thinking, because the doctor said you got basically a placebo dose, and I don't know. I don't think it was placebo, guys. I don't think suddenly my insomnia and my just general outlook on the world is totally different. So I would like to attribute it to that. If it is placebo, hey, it's a great placebo, because I actually feel like I can multitask now. I'm not depressed. I'm not so tired that I cannot physically do anything. I mean, I think if I listen back to these podcasts, I would probably stumble upon a lot of weeks where I was like, I just can't go on. And it was pretty hard some of the times. And now I feel like I can handle things again. So knocking on wood, that's not just some kind of thing. I'm hoping that this really was the thing that got me back on track, because I was on track until then. Just goes to show, maybe their suggestions are not good, or maybe I should have just been more alert to symptoms. But when you get into the place where you're just like so down and you're looking at life like, oh, I can't go on. You have all these sort of negative outlooks. You're not really able to get out and see solutions. You're just kind of mired in your own muck. When you're all in the mud, it's hard to see like, hey, let's just clean that mud off. No, it's just you feel like I'm living in the mud now. This is my new thing. This is my new normal. It doesn't have to be your new normal. So anyway, that is my exciting news that I have to share with you. And I literally started, I think I mentioned this, I started the medicine right around my last podcast 2 weeks ago. And about 5 days ago, I was like, boop, I can do it. So super excited about that. I am also having a good week with the deadlines, and I've been doing a lot of social things with Calliope, the kiddo. I took her to Harry Potter World last weekend. I took her to Universal City Tours, which, guys, I know if you come to LA, you're going to have to go there. It feels like an obligatory thing. It's not good. It's not good. There's still a backdraft exhibit thing where people, I guess they run in fire and stuff. I have no idea. I've never sat down and watched one of their shows, so maybe that's why I don't appreciate it as much. But honestly, I've known too many people who've worked there over the years who just like sing. I've heard too many stories. And also, it's just weird. There's no unification to it, There's a Minion area, and then suddenly you're in the Simpsons world, and then suddenly you're in Harry Potter, which matches nothing else, but it's the best thing there. And also, basically Calliope's too young. Like, I would not take a kid that young. It's a much older theme park than Disney would be, which I'm still not taking her to, guys. I'm putting my foot down. I refuse to get on the Disney train until she's old enough to ask for it. I have friends literally who are adults who go 2-3 times a week to have dinner there. Like, that's how much they love Disney. I'm not judging them. Listen, Disney is great. I'm just not, I never grew up with it as much. I was traumatized by Bambi as a child, and I just don't want to do that to my baby. I don't think just singing some Little Mermaid songs is going to, I mean, honestly, if you really think about it, Little Mermaid's a downer. I mean, she doesn't have legs. She gets her legs taken away from her. But then she's fine because she can swim. It's fine. There's a lot of complicated stuff there, especially if you read the original fairy tale. It's awful. It's really bad, guys. I mean, doesn't she die at the end? Spoiler alert. I don't know. I used to read old fairy tales just for fun, but then I realized, oh, this is sick. Bluebeard is not a fun one. You will not see a Disney equivalent of Bluebeard because he's hanging up his dead wives in the closet. Another spoiler alert. Anyway, I did a really cool parenting hangout with Pat Rothfuss. He had a hangout. Well, he does worldbuilders.org, which is basically a charity that he started to raise money for Habitat for Humanity. And he raised over $1 million, you guys. He's incredible. He's an incredible person, and just a kind, considerate, lovely guy, and so talented. And I'm so lucky to call him a friend. And he asked me to do this parenting hangout with Clint McElroy, who, by the way, I was kind of fangirling out over because he is the DM for Adventure Zone. And I just started listening to Adventure Zone. It's a podcast where his 3 kids and he do D&D, basically. And he's just so funny. I guess he was in radio before. I learned a lot about him. I just listened to their podcast, and I learned a lot about him during the hangout, way more than I knew about him. And I did ask to be on the podcast kind of boldly, and he kind of acted like either that was inappropriate or he didn't know what to do with that request. So I don't think I'll be hearing from him. I'll still be listening, Clint. You're cute. He was going off to do like a Santa thing. Anyway, so we had this whole hour podcast hangout with Pat, who is one of the most considerate people and a very considerate dad. And it got me thinking about just parenting in general. Like, I don't know if I've owned the I'm a parent kind of thing until lately. Like, I've just kind of like managed. I gave birth and I'm like, well, I guess this is a new thing. But I didn't really adopt the identity of parent until kind of recently. I think it's because Calliope's kind of like a real person now. She really has her own wants. And when we go out places, she can enjoy the surroundings versus like kind of being a blob. No offense. I mean, just babies, It's kind of fun when they're almost luggage, but then now when she's, taking her to the aquarium means she's engaging with the world and growing and being excited. I'm more excited. Whatever. It's okay to admit that. But just doing a parenting hangout, I'm like, oh, is that me now? Is that fine? I guess it is. It's just different. It's hard to let go of what you used to be to change your identity, because we get so entrenched in our own personalities and who we are and defining ourselves, especially defining ourselves so the outside world knows who we are, that it's kind of hard to shake that. You feel like you're really leaving something behind when you move on. And I'm like, well, it's okay. It's okay to just grow. Isn't it? Sometimes I'm okay with it. Sometimes I miss playing video games all the time or doing videos. It's fine. Just life changes, and as long as you're being true to yourself and not the thing I worry about is you're that person clinging to something in the past that's over, and then you're just like, just let it go, lady. Let that piece of driftwood go. I'll give you an example of something that I did the other day that I don't know if I should have said no to it or not. Anyway, there's the new fashion trend is really chunky sneakers, like with huge like soles and really chunky high. And I love big soles and big shoes. I hate like delicate shoes. If I wear like a delicate flat, I feel like I'm an elephant in tiny shoes. I need a big hefty shoe on my feet to feel like I'm balanced. And so it's super popular, those Fila or whatever. And I went to the store and I tried them on. I looked in the mirror. I was like, no, you're that lady who's way too old for those stretch pants. Like, don't be that lady. But then I'm like, should I just be the lady I want? Am I looking at myself from outside, or am I looking at myself for inside? Am I wanting the sneakers because I want to look cool to other people, or do I genuinely want the sneakers? So is it an image I'm clinging to, or I just want chunky sneakers? I spent a lot of time overthinking things. Anywho, I didn't get the sneakers, but I might go back in it. So after that, then after the parenting thing, I was kind of thinking about how I parent in a way that I wasn't aware of, because then you're just self-conscious. It's like, oh, what is your process? And I'm like, I didn't know my process. I guess this is my process. And I guess my process was summarized as treating my baby like a real human being and being considerate to her needs, knowing that she's relying on me to do a lot of things for her, but always giving her agency as a person. So she can grow up to be a person who feels like she has control over herself and can enter the world and feel like she can be bold in asserting herself. I think that's super important. And it's something I don't necessarily have. I've always been really shy. Like, my first thing, in life is to think that I'm imposing upon people when I call them or text them or want to do something. Like, when I invite somebody out, I feel like, oh God, I feel like literally they roll their eyes and are like, oh, how am I going to fit this in? And it's so crazy. Like, it wasn't until I kind of thought about how that's not necessarily normal. Because you think whatever you're doing is normal. It's not. A lot of things we do are not quote unquote normal, because there is no normal. But I don't think everybody thinks automatically every time you reach out to a friend to do something, you think they're imposing upon you. Assuming they just wouldn't want to do it. That is a negative thing that I need to work on. Anywho, but, what was I saying? Anywho, the whole parenting thing. Anyway, so that's one thing I want her to be able to do, because I don't have it. And then another thing is that I don't want her to necessarily do things for other people, and that's why I don't post about her a lot, because I think when you are a person who doesn't have an identity necessarily, because she doesn't, or she's not aware of her identity, she's kind of finding it and growing through it and waiting, do I like this? Do I like that? I ask her, and she doesn't really know, because she's a baby. She doesn't know the options yet. So my job is to introduce her to everything and then reinforce what she likes, but not push her. So if she decides she really likes fishing or something, I don't want to buy her every fishing rod and then take her to fishing 5 times a week. I wouldn't do that anyway. That sounds really odd. Are there fishing stage moms? Anywho, there's a fine line between pushing and encouraging. And I think that's just a hard line to walk. But I don't want to be a person who makes her identity based. I don't want her to make her identity based on pleasing other people, because I definitely did that. I think it was inadvertent, but I considered my whole self-worth wrapped up into how I performed for other people and what I achieved on the outside. And then when I either changed or morphed into somebody else, I had a hard time adjusting, because I didn't have sort of this core confidence in who I was underneath all the external stuff. And that's just something I'm always going to have to struggle with, and I want to make sure that she doesn't have that. But of course, then I'm going to compensate in a way where she's going to have other problems, and then she'll be like, why didn't you do this more? Well, because my mom did this to me, and then I did this, and it's fine. I'll pay for therapy. I also had I know I'm talking about kid stuff a lot today. It just happened. And today I actually tweeted something, because honestly, it kind of blew my mind and I had to share it. And I said, okay, genuine question. Why is it legal to hit your child? And you can't hit a colleague or a spouse, or you'll go to jail. You'll be considered, it's assault. Why is it legal to hit the baby, the people who are least able to defend themselves? Why is that? I mean, why? And guys, the responses were fascinating, honestly, because what I noticed mostly, and I will be upfront, I was spanked as a kid a couple times. I remember them vividly because it was very traumatic for me. And I don't think that my parents intended upon traumatizing me. I think that there's a mindset in this country, at least, because that's the only country I know that well. Is there a fire? Do you hear that siren? I don't know. But there's a mindset where it's okay. That's just accepted. It's just accepted that people spank or their kids to discipline them, quote unquote. And I think that's just a lore that we pass on so that to say that somebody's abusing, people got very defensive on Twitter. Because you could tell they would be defensive about like, well, toddlers have to be disciplined. There's no other way to get through to a toddler. And I found it so fascinating that a majority of the responses justifying hitting your kids were from men, mostly. And the reasons were very like, consistently, you have to do it. It's the only way to deal with them in certain circumstances, especially to the example of running across the street or touching a hot stove. Those were used over and over again about a reason why you should hit your child. And then the other one was, well, if my mom hadn't hit me, I wouldn't be the person I was today. And I think that was, so it was almost like they were defensive because I was implying that their mom abused them. But this was mostly from guys, And I found it very interesting because it seemed to me from the response, and this is a small section, that mostly boys would have been hit more by their parents than girls. Because I guess, for whatever reason, and it may be more socially acceptable to discipline a boy like that more. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the very definition of quote unquote cycle of violence. Because I don't think, I am sure that most of the people who responded, who were defensive about hitting their kids because they obviously did, I don't think they were being bad parents. I honestly think that they were taught by society and their parents and everybody around them that this is what you do as a parent. You hit your children to discipline them. And I think that's very pervasive in society here. And I think that's really sad because there is literally no science behind that. None whatsoever. Zero. Every single scientific study of thousands and hundreds of thousands of children shows that children who are hit at home are more aggressive, they are less likely to concentrate, they're more likely to be bullies and perpetuate violence and have anxiety disorders and depression later on in life. And the more I dived into it, this was kind of a tweet that was off the cuff of my head because I was just like, why is this legal? And the more I researched it, the more I am now even more adamantly against it. Why is there a siren here? Is the podcast place coming? Sorry, guys. The door is open 2 inches. It's just, I don't know. I live in a bad neighborhood. It's fine. But it was really interesting. And if anybody's listening to this who do spank their kids, listen, I'm not saying that you abuse your children. Quote, I'm not saying that you have the intention to abuse your children. I'm saying that we have been gaslit in a way as a society and as people who are parents in telling us that, hey, this is the option that we need to use under circumstances, even though the science does not back it up. And it's legal, technically. You can hit your kid until it leaves a bruise. So aren't there ways that people hit people that don't leave bruises, like with hoses and stuff? I've seen that in gangster movies. I don't know. That just seems crazy to me. It seems crazy because it's not legal to do unto another adult. You can't do it. Nobody punishes adult by spanking them. Why are we hitting children? Because we're teaching children that it's okay to hit other people. That's an acceptable response under certain circumstances. And they're kids who don't have the judgment. They haven't learned what we do. Like, why not use it under other circumstances that are completely inappropriate? I don't know. That's just me, guys. I think it probably stems from some puritanical sort of tradition, but I will firmly saying no to it. And if I encourage you to kind of do your own research about it, because the more I did, the more fascinated I was about how there's literally no reinforcement of it. And in some states it is illegal in a sense, but in 19 states, guys, 19 states, schools can spank your children. Strangers can hit your children to discipline them. That is insane. It's insane. The idea that someone would take it upon themselves at my child's school to hit her it's crazy to me. So anyway, maybe I live in a bubble. I don't know. But it's an interesting point. it's an interesting point because I didn't want to make a lot of people defensive, and it was so clear when people were defensive. And it just goes to show that however gently you bring up something that people feel defensive about, they're not going to necessarily like, oh, a couple people did say, oh, that's made me think about this issue in a different way, which I thought was pretty cool. But then a lot of other people are not able to be open like that to a new concept. And I think that's kind of like the core of us as people being able to grow. Like, I hope that I'm open to other people's point of view on issues that I don't agree with, because I want to be able to grow. I want to be able to at least empathize and see through their eyes. Because if not, I'm just never going to learn and never be able to relate to them. And then we're all closed off from each other and crappy. Okay, moving on. I had a pretty good consumption week, you guys. Not with consumption. That's tuberculosis. Don't have it. Don't need it. Don't want it. But I did get to consume some stuff this week. Super fun. I started watching She-Ra on Netflix, the new reboot of She-Ra. Now, for the record, I don't mean to brag, but back in 2012 or 11, I found Noelle Stevenson because I found her webcomic, Nimona. So Noelle Stevenson is the creator of the new reboot of She-Ra, and it is so good, you guys. I am like 3 episodes in, and I'm just completely hooked. I love everything about it. I actually got to a voice audition for it last year, and I was kind of bummed that I didn't get it. But when I listened to the voices, I'm like, oh my God, they found the perfect people. It is so good. The character's so great. The way they rebooted this world that as a kid I was in love with because I loved She-Ra. She was a chick with a sword. I mean, you didn't get a lot of that back then in my childhood. But I love the way that the characters have been reconceived, especially Catra and Adora. The relationship between them is fascinating. She's set up like this unbelievable thing, so I can't wait to see where it goes. And I heard there were complaints about it, but I really don't care. Complaints about it when the art came out because she didn't look like old She-Ra, but like, hello, it's a re-envisioning of She-Ra. It's not like that's the way her boobs were not canon, guys, okay? Sorry. I also finished, I was going to dive into, I need to finish Sabrina. I was going to get back there, but then I found there was a new British baking Christmas show on Netflix too. And that was amazing. It was 2 episodes. It was so good, you guys. Why is it so good? Why am I so comforted? And then I watched the America's baking show. It was the ripoff. Horrible. It's trash, guys. It was on like ABC or whatever. Trash. Do you know why? Because the people they cast, they were just bad. None of them were half the baker than any of the British baking show contestants were. They clearly didn't do their research. I mean, honestly, I could have baked better than any of those people on the American baking show. I could not hold a candle to anybody on the British baking show. And I feel like, guys, this is a sacred show. Like, nominate better people. People with a little bit more charisma and joie de vivre with their baking, okay? I mean, the decorations were an insult in the American one. It made me angry. I'm physically angry right now. How dare they reboot such a great show and make it so crappy? God, network TV, stop it. All right, that's my rant for the week. Lots of video game wannas this week. I've been streaming. I don't know if I saw you guys a couple on Saturday. I'll see you again this weekend. I've been doing Assassin's Creed or the new Assassin's Creed. And it's so good. I love it. I love Cassandra, the character. I love the twists and turns of the story. I just love ancient Greece as a setting. And I've just been really enjoying it. But I kind of want to scratch the itch of the little indie game again. I mean, I was playing that Slime Rancher, and I was addicted to that. Thank you. And I finished Kingdom Rush on my phone. And there's a couple of new indie games that I really, really want to download. Number one, my friend Greg Kasavin. Kasavin? I never pronounce his last name. I've known him since I was 14, okay? And he does Supergiant Games. So he's one of the creators of that company. And they did Bastion and Transistor. And they have this new game called Hades out, which looks amazing. It looks like Bastion in hell. And I'm really excited about it. So I downloaded that. He gave me a code, full transparency. but hey, friends. And then I was browsing around on Steam and I found a couple of games I really want to play called, one just came out today, Gris. Guys, this is the most beautiful game I've ever seen. It's a girl in this gorgeous dress and it's kind of like a side scroller. But honestly, when I was watching the demo video, I was like, oh, I'm in love with this game. Gris. So 100% want to play that one. And then through that, I found this other game called Forgotten Anne, which looked really cool. I mean, it looked like Anne of Green Gables, first of all, as the main character. I don't think it is, but... And then it looks like this crazy sort of Alice in Wonderland game, an adventure game, kind of. So I downloaded that. Clearly, it's almost the end of the year, so I'm just tax deducting whatever I want. And then my brother has swearing by The Return of Obra Dinn, which is this... The creator of Papers, Please made this indie game, Return of the Obra Dinn. I guess it's a mystery about a ship that was missing. And you have to figure out, I don't know the details, but Ryan, who has played every game ever, swears it is the best game he's ever played in his life. He was streaming it a little bit, so I don't know. Those are the things that I would really like to check out over the break. And maybe, but then I have Assassin's Creed and it's so good. Gosh, guys, if I could just stream every night of my life, stream video games, it's a good gig, guys. I've been on Twitch for 5 years now, and everybody's like, look at this Twitch thing. I'm like, old news. And then I'm like, get off my block, guys. I've been here for a while. Whatever. I also did a guest appearance on my friend's podcast called Go Fact Yourself. It was me versus Elliot Kalin, the head writer of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And it's super fun. That'll be out in February, or January. Not sure. I'll tweet you. And so I did that, and I listened to the Adventure Zone Dust, which was a weird coincidence because I did that podcast. Adventure Zone is so fun, you guys. It really is. It would be nice to have a girl on there every so often, but I just listen to Dust, so I don't know if they maybe have some women come and guest. I'm sure they do, but so I'm just digging through. The Dust was like this world with werewolves and vampires, and it was kind of urban fantasy, but set in the Old West. It was very cool. And so I told Clint McElroy that he needed to do more of it, and he was like, okay. And then that was when I told him, please have me on your show, and then it was awkward. Fun times. Book-wise, had some good stuff. I finished the Leonardo da Vinci book. It did take 2 weeks to read, more than 2 weeks, but it was like 800 pages. And it was incredible. It was incredible. I had no idea who Leonardo da Vinci was before. I will be transparent. I mean, I knew he was this sort of an artist, but I didn't know the extent to how fascinating he was as a person. And it was inspiring. It really was. It kind of got, I mean, I will admit I'm not an engineer brain. I am, and quite frankly, hopefully this will change after reading that book. I don't observe the world around me as much as I would like to. I will drive down the same street 20,000 times and then suddenly I'll be like, where'd that building come from? It didn't spring up overnight and it's 20 stories high. Hi, you did not notice that. So I live more in my own head than I do in the world around me. And what was interesting about Leonardo da Vinci is that he lived solely outwardly focused into the world around him, and he wanted to know how things worked. And he would do experiment after experiment to figure out for himself mostly how things work. And through doing that, because he just literally just looked at something and was like, why is that a spiral? Why does the water flow that way? Why is the sky blue? And he would go set out and figure it out. And through that, he literally, had he released all the research that he had done all over his life, he would have revolutionized the world. He would have revolutionized astronomy and fluid dynamics and engineering of all kinds and flight. He had the idea for scuba diving before anybody else did. It's just fascinating because he literally just asked why and followed through on it. He dissected 30 cadavers. He released his dissection pictures, it would have been 100 years before that people would have known about how the human body worked in a really interesting way. So, and then, but there was this kind of pervasive attitude in the book where it's like, well, if he, I don't want to shame Leonardo for not getting his crap together, but had he done this treason, then this would have happened. And then it's sort of like, I don't know, man. What I love about him is that he loved knowledge for his own self. And I guess, The author tried to paint a picture of sort of like of regret maybe toward the end of his life, that maybe he regretted not releasing and following through on more. And I don't know, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe he was fine because he was taken care of his whole life by patrons like kings and, the Medicis and all the Sforzas and all these things. Like, I just, there's a weird line that people are like, well, if only they had just worked a little harder for my benefit. Or maybe I'm just being defensive because I don't finish anything. Guys, I think I think I've tapped I have a whole another layer of guilt, and maybe using Leonardo da Vinci as a reason why I have like a million half-done screenplays. Ooh, let's talk about that in therapy this week. So anyway, I highly recommend it. It took forever to read, but it was so inspiring, and it really is forcing me, because when Calliope, she's in that phase where she constantly asks why, and I intend on actually, if I have something that I actually don't know the answer to, I'm going to go look it up so I can know it too. If she asks why a car, goes fast, I'm going to figure it out because I have no idea how an engine works. It just is there. And that's why every time I go to service it, they make me spend another $300 because I don't know enough to refute them about it. So I want her to know how to clean up. I want her to know how to rewire a lamp and change her oil. I want her to be capable in a way that I'm not, which is going to come in handy if there's an apocalypse, which I pretty much am sure there is going to be because of global warming. Anywho, moving on. I have a couple of books that I've downloaded. I'm excited about Robots versus Fairies Anthology of short stories. Hello, yes please. And then I downloaded this book called A Study in Honor by Claire Odell, which is, I just started it, but it's a retelling of Sherlock Holmes in like an alt cyberpunk future, following Watson. So, but it's two women of color, which is cool. So everything about it seems really awesome, and I'm excited to dig in. Before I go into questions, I want to give a shout out to a hangout that I'm having next Tuesday evening. I am streaming on my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Felicia Day, and I'm doing a charity fundraiser for the fire victims in California. Really, it's an excuse for me and my friend Kate McCucci from Garfunkel and Oates to get together and sing Christmas songs. So we're just going to be singing Christmas carols, and when our friends come over, we're going to be telling stories about our Christmases from past, and we're going to be drinking eggnog and opening weird gifts and all that stuff. Really, it's just something to be able to celebrate the holiday with you guys. So come by. It's from 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific, and we will be hanging out that evening with some of our friends. A lot of people are out of town, but that's cool. If you want to come by, just come by. It'll be fun. All right, let's do some questiones. Before I do that, please, if you are able to give me a review on iTunes, I really appreciate that. I am in the midst of, so I've done this podcast for a year, and I'm in the midst of trying to find a network, like a home for this podcast. Do you know why? Because I would like somebody else to help me with the graphics and do the uploading. And also, it would be nice to have a place that had a studio so that I could go by and do a recording with a guest and have it sound good and not have me screw it up like I did the 2 times I tried to have a guest on here because I was using Skype and it's crap. So that's my new goal, to get a network to sign the show. And that what would help me is that more people listen and lots of people review it. So if you could I really just need some help. And several of you have offered to be a producer on the podcast. But what I need is somebody to do all the graphics and just make sure all the uploads go and give me assets to do sort of marketing, logistical stuff. And that would help. So, review, spread word. That's all I want you to do. That would be nice. If not, it's still fine. Okay, here's some questiones. Tormiraburi. I'm sorry. It's a Twitch handle. Anyway. Hey, that person asks, hey, Felicia, I've been loving this podcast, especially as a resource for book recommendations. And so far, I've loved everything I've read, especially The Armored Saint. Oh, that one was good, wasn't it? I wanted to ask, what do you think about books and authors that include a lot of diversity? E.g., most of the characters are people of color, LGBTQ, etc. And do you have any recommendations of books where this is the case? Well, this is a really good question. Thank you. I am definitely drawn to books that have a lot of diversity. As a person who tries to understand a lot of differing points of view in the world, I see a lot of books that are done from a first-person white male perspective, but I also found myself only reading books with a first-person white female perspective for a very long time with my romance novel book club. And I kind of got a little frustrated about that, to be honest with you, and that's why I changed. I was like, well, I want to read about all kinds of people, and I want to see through the eyes of all sorts of backgrounds and all that stuff. So, yes, I don't think it robs anybody if you're seeing through someone else's eyes and understanding something about the world you didn't know before. Because then you can approach everybody in a different way. You're growing. I mean, if you're not growing, what's the point of living, right? You want to gather up as much and see the boundaries of your own brain as far as you can go before you croak. I mean, at least that's my perspective. So yes, I definitely make an effort to kind of branch out and see the world or worlds through. I mean, that's kind of like why I like fantasy and sci-fi. It's not necessarily just to escape, although I do love escaping, but it's to see when you're in a different world, but the author talks about issues that are pertinent to you. You can kind of like take a bird's eye view of those issues in a new way, and you can think about things in a different way. I think there was one book that really, was it He, She, and It by Marge Piercy? I don't know. For some reason, that book definitely changed my worldview on a lot of things, on Jewish culture, on sort of autonomy of self. And it was a really interesting alt world, sort of dystopian, futuristic, corporate state kind of stuff. You know, very good. It's a classic, guys. Classic. So there are a couple of authors that I think really embody that, those qualities. I'm particularly obsessed with Nnedi Okorafor. She wrote Vinci, but she's also has a lot of other books out there right now. Super amazing. She won the award that I gave out, the Hugo Award for one of her YA novels. And she's also, I think, writing Black Panther. I follow her on Twitter, but I follow a lot of authors on Twitter, so sometimes I forget who wrote what. And then, of course, N.K. Jemisin, who also won an award that same evening that I was presenting at. She has many, many books that have diverse leads and things like that. Jade City is one that I think I mentioned earlier by Fonda Lee. It's an Asian fantasy novel, gangster novel. It's so good. I love it. One of my favorite series in the past that I read was Louis Bujold. She has a series, it's called the Vorkosigan series, and it's a sci-fi series, but the lead protagonist, Miles, he has a really rare bone condition. It's actually quite tragic. But his bones break a lot, and he's he's like 4'9", so he's very, very short, and people think he's a mutant because of his physical disabilities. And actually, it's one of the most fascinating characters in sci-fi, in my opinion. Just incredible and just well written. I mean, she's one of the best writers, I think, in fantasy and sci-fi. Just one of those people who's been writing for 40 years and just doesn't stop. So, yes, I would highly recommend, and I would love to hear you guys' suggestions. Please send them over so I can share them. One other person asked, where can I find your book recommendations? I have been so bad about uploading on my Goodreads, you guys. There's been a lot of maintenance issues in my life since I had a baby, and I know that's almost 2 years now, so there's no excuse. So I'm trying to get back on the bandwagon. I wanted to start that newsletter. So what I'm hoping is that when I find a network for the podcast, then I can sort of like find the bandwidth to keep that newsletter going, and like email you guys with all the notes from the show, so we have sort of a centralized place where you can at least go like, oh, in that newsletter, she recommended these 5 books. Also, I need to update my Goodreads list because I do love Goodreads, and I just haven't been on there for a while since Vaginal Fantasy stopped. So my bad, and thank you for encouraging me to clean my house. Next question. Chelsea LaFay asks, I'm due with my first baby any day now. Whoa, that was on 12/4. Did you already give birth, Chelsea? Congratulations. What tips do you have for breastfeeding moms? Oh boy. Well, I mean, I'm still breastfeeding. Yes, my baby's almost 2 and it has to stop, okay? We talk about it every day that mama's milk is going bye-bye. But then she's like, try, mama, try. And it's so cute. She says it in a baby voice. Try, mama, try. And then, of course, I'm like, okay. And my body continues to produce milk. So, listen, if anybody's grossed out, just cover your ears. It's breast lactate. That's what their function is. It's for milk, okay? I have so much, by the way, you guys, and I don't know, I have so much milk that's over a year old. And basically, after a year, you're supposed to throw it away. But I forgot to donate it. So I have like 100 ounces of breast milk in my freezer that I need to throw away, but I can't do it because it's my precious. I remember that first year when literally any drop was like, it's liquid gold. You can't, because it was basically, I had to produce it in order to feed the baby because she didn't eat anything else for 6-7 months. And I would go out of town for work or whatever, or I'd have to go out for the day and I'd have to pump after 2 hours. Guys, if anybody you know is breastfeeding, please just tell them how much you admire them. Modern living does not join up with breastfeeding very well. And so women have to really suffer in a way to keep breastfeeding going, especially when they go to work. And a lot of people's breast milk, it dries up when they go to work because of the stress. I mean, it's just too much. The body is being drained every day. I mean, imagine like producing them. I was like a husk. I hate drinking water anyway. Imagine being like sucked dry every day. Like my innards were just like the Sahara. There was like tumbleweeds going through there. You know what I'm saying? So please just give them a shout out because it's really tough. And you have all these hormonal things going on and you're just not who you used to be anyway. You don't have the memory. I mean, all these things physically are happening to your body and also you're trying to keep a baby alive with your boobs. So, pro tip, I would say my best advice would be when you get a clog, warm is great, but the best thing to do is put cold on it and take some Advil. I had blockage after blockage after blockage after blockage, and I had mastitis 2-3 times. It's so painful. You feel like, I mean, you guys, if you haven't done it, you have no idea, because I had no idea what I was getting into, but you develop these rocks in your boobs because basically the ducts get plugged up and then they are so painful. It's like a hard golf ball in your boob. And it's just like, and then if you don't take care of it, it'll get infected and you have to go to the hospital. And you could even die from this, guys. You could die by your boobs. Does anybody appreciate? Ladies, please. It's crazy. Nobody tells you anything. You just get in there and just swim around in the sorrow. It's great. Being a parent's great. And if you have any problems breastfeeding, a lot of people are like, oh, it just didn't work. I'm sure it doesn't work for a lot of people. Absolutely. But I almost gave up, and then I hired a person to come in, and insurance helped me pay for it. I went over there, and I worked out a couple of issues with her, and I was able to keep going. So, like, I'm not saying that it's going to work for everybody. But in general, I think that people are not supported enough to make it work in a way, and it's worth fighting for because there are a lot of health benefits if you can make it work. That said, if you're not making it work, don't do it anymore. I honestly wish I had stopped a year ago. It would have been way less stressful, and I'm sure that her health would be the exact same because especially after a year, it's fine. They have food. And I had other friends who are just really suffered because of the hormonal problems and also trying to balance work and the baby. And, you know, in this world, we're not given enough time off with the babies to be able to really make it work in a way that doesn't really super stress the mom out. So do what you can. As long as you're feeding your baby, it's fine, okay? So good luck, Chelsea. Hopefully you had that baby because, gosh, that was about 10 days ago. Get them out. Just get out of there, baby. Do it. All right. Last question. Meg writes words. At Meg writes words. Okay. The reason why I can't pronounce everybody's names is a really stupid reason. I'm going to tell you guys right now. I put my fabulous mod, Sean Sandaluki Look, takes all the questions and collates them and puts them in a spreadsheet for me so I can just lift them up every week. Sean, you're amazing. But I cut and paste them onto like sort of a sticky note, you know, the Apple sticky notes. And I cut and paste them on a sticky note sized one. So because I'm too lazy to actually pull the sticky note out to the full width of the cut and paste, everybody's name gets scrunched up into like a 5-column thing versus just like somebody's name. So it's completely my fault. I'm just so unprofessional. No network's going to want me. Now when I pull it out, I can see everybody's names perfectly. It's Meg Writes Words, okay? At Meg Writes Words. Anyway. Hi, Felicia. I've written a novel, but I'd like to try my hand at screenplays. The thread you retweeted from Ed Solomon was so informative. It was great. It was great. Ed Solomon on Twitter. Amazing screenwriter. Great tweeter. Do you recommend any other resources besides Save the Cat? Thanks. Love the podcast. Well, I don't recommend Save the Cat necessarily, although that is the number one screenplay book out there. And I think it's the number one screenplay book out there because it gives you rules on how to sort of cut and paste a screenplay. And there are a lot of awesome things in that book. But in my opinion, it gives you such a strict formula by X page. You have to have this done, and this happens by X page. It really is too paint by numbers, and it, I think, kind of perpetuates the problem that a lot of us have when we go to the movies, in that a lot of things just seem exactly the same over and over again. You know exactly what's going to happen, so you don't need to watch the movie. And that bothers me. So that's just my opinion. But of course, again, lots of people love that book and use it as a jumping off point to get their own creativity started. So I'm not going to denigrate anything. It's just not my favorite. I have read so many writing books, you guys. I think in hopes that somehow I'd read one that would just make it easy for me. It's not easy. Writing is not easy. It is work. That's why it's a job. That's why people pay writers for a lot of money to write, generally, or maybe not. But people still write because they love it, because the work is interesting to them. And of course, it goes back to that thing like, there's no easy, like, bullet. You have to have something to say. You have to want to say something, want to say it bad enough that the work is something you can get through, that you can embrace to get to the end. And the biggest thing I've ever learned in writing is just get to the end. Because once you get to the end, you'll know how to go back to the beginning and start again. I used to, back in the guild days, I would stop and start and go back to the beginning over and over again before getting to the end. And it was a waste of my time, because once I got to the end, I would discover something. Oh, the show is really about this. And then I go back and start again, and everything that I rewrote 50 times will be rewritten completely again. So why didn't I just get to the end in the first place? And Chuck Wendig, who is an amazing tweeter online, his thing is just like, write bad, and get to the end, and then you'll know why you wanted to do this story in the first place. That said, I did read a book recently recommended to me by John Rogers, the amazing showrunner of Leverage and Librarians and all that stuff, that kind of transformed. It was really spoke my language, and it was called Into the Woods by John York. It's a guy who used to work at the BBC, and it's very structure-oriented, but not in a way that's prescriptive. It's very much about sort of like symmetry and arcs, and sort of why the hero's journey, quote unquote, is popular, and why it works, and why it's universal. And I don't know, that talked to me, it spoke to me in a way that I found inspiring, and I wanted to go work after that. So really, it's about whatever you read that will get you excited about going to work afterwards. And if Save the Cat is the thing that gives you the formula that makes it easier to just start typing, go at it, man. But that other book really was the one that made me go like, oh, that's great. Also, there's a classic called by Lejos Egri, The Art of Dramatic Writing, and that's kind of the oldest book. Very old. It's one a lot of people use in college. And after reading John York, Into the Woods, that book, the Egri book, actually clicked a lot more for me, because it's very dense. But then I went back and read Egri, and I was like, oh, now I understand this more because I have a language to understand this. And then I went and wrote some stuff, and I think it was better, you guys. At least I got to the end. I have a lot of rewriting to do, but that's the job, man. Rewriting is the job, not the writing part. All right. Well, I'm out of wise words. I hope I didn't offend anybody with the spanking thing. I didn't even want to talk about it, but then I'm like, this is my podcast. I might as well just bring up stuff. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks. I guess it'll be Christmas? I'm not sure. If it's Christmas, I'm going to have to delay a couple days. And hopefully we're going to be able to celebrate an awesome 2019 together, you guys. 2019 is my lucky number, 19. I won the lottery twice with it. I won $500 when I was about 12 with the numbers 319. And then I also won the Texas lottery. I got 5 out of 6 and I got $1,200 or something like that. And 19 and 23 were two of my lucky numbers. So I'm excited about next year. I think we're going to have some good things happen. And all of us can start it with a little bit of a hopeful spring in our step. All right. Please review me on iTunes and spread word if you can about how much you enjoy this and if you do. And I will talk to you later. Bye.